I defended the Travis Kelce contract yesterday because you can't trust Rashee Rice maturity.
No.
Worthy's a gadget guy. McCole Hardman, if he's still around, forget it. So
no, he's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So the reality is, Reed, Mahomes, Travis Kelce, there's a lot of trust. And I do think he's very good situationally. He's not a 90-catch guy and 12 touchdowns.
When the news broke that Travis Kelce had signed a 3-year extension with the Kansas City Chiefs, it sounded simple. Another superstar staying loyal. Another dynasty move. Another reason to believe the Chiefs weren't slowing down. But the reality behind that headline tells a completely different story. Because the moment you look past the surface, the structure of this deal starts to feel off. The numbers don't match the narrative. The timeline doesn't match the intention. And suddenly, what looked like a long-term commitment begins to feel like something much shorter, something far more calculated. Only 1 year of this contract actually carries real weight. The 2026 season is where the guaranteed money sits, where the incentives matter, and where Kelce is truly locked in. Everything beyond that exists more as a financial tool than a football promise, designed to give flexibility rather than stability. In the NFL, contracts like this are not accidents. Teams don't just structure deals this way for no reason. When dummy years appear, when money is backloaded, when exit points are built in early, it signals something deeper. It signals preparation. It signals uncertainty. It signals that both sides understand something the public doesn't.
So Travis Kelce is washed and the Chiefs overpaid. That's what some people are saying, even after they found out Travis Kelce's quote-unquote 3-year deal was really a 1-year deal. $12 million worth up to $15 million. He's still overpaid and he's washed, even though last year, at the age of 36 years old, look at the guys who are paid more than Travis Kelce from an average per year standpoint. He's better than half of those guys. In total on the year, he was tied for 6th in receptions, 4th in yards with 851. He had 5 touchdowns, but look at this one. Yards after the catch, 3rd, only behind Tyler Warren and Trey McBride.
And that's where the shift happens. Because this isn't about rewarding Kelce for what he's done. It's about controlling what comes next. The Chiefs aren't committing to 3 more years of dominance with him. They're buying time, managing risk, and quietly setting the stage for what could be the end. What makes this even more interesting is how clean the messaging looks on the outside. No panic, no controversy, just a calm announcement that keeps fans comfortable. But behind that calm surface is a structure that tells a very different truth about where this relationship is heading. And once you see that truth, the entire narrative changes. This isn't a celebration of longevity. It's not a vote of confidence in the future. It's something much more strategic, much more controlled, and much more revealing. Because the Chiefs didn't extend Kelce. They designed a contract that lets them move on. The real story of this contract isn't in the years. It's in the escape routes built inside it. Because buried within the structure is a quiet mechanism that changes everything about how this deal should be understood. And it's something most fans never even notice at first glance. That mechanism is what teams call a soft exit point. By the time the 2027 season approaches, the Chiefs have the ability to move on from Travis Kelce with minimal financial damage. No massive dead cap hit, no long-term burden, just a clean break if they choose to take it. And that's not normal for a player of Kelce's stature. When franchises truly believe in a multi-year future with a star, they lock them in. They create financial consequences for leaving. They make it difficult to walk away. But this contract does the opposite. It makes leaving easy.
Where we need to start, and that is Travis Kelce is back in the fold. Details came out about the contract. It is something that Chris had theorized about, and we want to get right to it because what looks like a 3-year deal isn't really a 3-year deal, is it?
No, it's not. And honestly, I didn't think that this was going to be that big of a deal. But when you have somebody like Ian Rappaport come out and say, Kelce is getting a 3-year deal for $58 million.
At the same time, it gives Kelce something just as important: control. If he wants to walk away after 2026, the structure supports it. If his body starts to slow down, if the motivation shifts, if life outside football begins to take priority, there's nothing tying him down beyond that single season. This is where the balance becomes clear. The Chiefs protect themselves from decline. Kelce protects himself from being stuck, and both sides quietly agree on something without ever saying it publicly. The future is uncertain, and flexibility matters more than commitment. In modern NFL economics, this kind of deal is becoming more common, but rarely with players at this level. This isn't a role player or a mid-tier veteran. This is one of the greatest tight ends in league history. And yet, even here, the structure reflects caution instead of confidence. That caution speaks volumes. It tells you the Chiefs are already thinking ahead. It tells you they understand how quickly things can change at this stage of a career. And it tells you they're not willing to tie their future to a player entering the final phase of his prime. Because once a team builds an easy exit into a contract, they are preparing to use it. And once that door exists, the question is no longer if it will open, it's when.
Kelce deal, and this is not your guys' fault. This is honestly NFL reportage fault. 3 years, $54 million is not the deal. This is a 1 year, $12 million deal. After next season, the 5th day of the league year, he is owed a $40 million check. You know what? I don't think he's going to get that check. It's just called this, so is...
At some point, every great career reaches a moment where the question stops being hypothetical. It stops being something for the future. It becomes immediate, unavoidable, and impossible to ignore. For Travis Kelce, that moment is right now. Kelce is entering his 14th season in the NFL, and more importantly, he's entering it at an age where very few players at his position are still performing at an elite level. Tight end is one of the most physically demanding roles in football. It requires strength, speed, blocking, route running, and constant contact. The wear adds up, and the signs are already there. Not necessarily in a dramatic drop-off, but in the subtle ways that careers begin to shift. Fewer explosive moments, more reliance on experience, smarter positioning instead of raw dominance. These are not signs of failure. They are signs of transition.
Chiefs Kingdom, let's go, baby. It's official. Excited for 2026 and just excited to put on the Chiefs uniform in front of you guys again. Let's get Arrowhead rocking, baby. We'll see you guys in a few months.
What makes this even more significant is that Kelce himself has already entertained the idea of retirement before. This isn't a new conversation suddenly created by age. It's something that has been building in the background, something that has been quietly acknowledged even as he continued to perform at a high level. Now, with this contract structure, that conversation feels less like speculation and more like a timeline. The deal doesn't push his career forward, it contains it. It creates a window rather than extending a horizon, and that window feels intentionally short. There's also the mental side of it. After years of success, championships, and individual achievements, the question shifts from what can I achieve to what is left to prove. For players like Kelce, that question carries weight, because once the motivation changes, everything else follows. And then there's life beyond football. Opportunities that didn't exist earlier in his career are now fully open. Media, business, public presence, all of it expanding rapidly. The transition doesn't feel distant anymore, it feels ready. So when you combine the age, the physical toll, the contract structure, and the shifting priorities, a pattern begins to form. This doesn't feel like the middle of a career, it feels like the final chapter beginning. For years, the identity of the Kansas City Chiefs offense was simple. It ran through Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. That connection wasn't just productive, it was inevitable. In big moments, in broken plays, in pressure situations, the ball always found Kelce. But that certainty is starting to shift.
He can retire next year. Here's the numbers. It's 3 years, $54.735 million. That could be worth up to $57.735 million for an average of $18.245 million per year. But again, year one is $12 million with $3 million in incentives. and the last payment is a guaranteed salary in 2028 of $40 million, which he will never see.
Right.
And
The Chiefs are no longer building their offense around one dominant security blanket. Over the past season, there has been a clear effort to diversify. Younger receivers are getting more involved. Play calling is spreading the field more. The reliance on Kelce, while still present, is no longer absolute. And that's not accidental. Teams don't suddenly change offensive identity unless they are preparing for something. In this case, it feels like preparation for a future where Kelce is no longer the centerpiece, not gone yet, but no longer untouchable, no longer the only answer when things break down. There's also a practical side to it. At this stage of his career, managing Kelce's workload becomes essential. Fewer snaps, smarter usage, preserving him for key moments instead of every moment. That kind of adjustment is not about maximizing output, it's about extending what's left.
Agents can be like, we got him $18 million a year, and the Chiefs can spread the money out. Is Travis Kelce, even in a down year, last year and the year before, by any metric was a top 5 tight end? At $12 million, he is obviously worth it. Yes, he makes Patrick more comfortable.
No
yes,
question.
he is still a legitimate third down and red zone threat. And yes, the Chiefs need to do a lot of work to make sure last year was a blip rather than a trend. I know a lot of folks have been preying on the downfall of the Chiefs, including your beloved co-host, who 4 years in a row have said they're cooked, and finally he was right once, and now he's taking a victory lap for 6 months.
Even Mahomes' game has started to evolve. Less reliance on improvisation with one target, more structured distribution across the field. It's subtle, but it's there, and it reflects a quarterback adapting to a future where his most trusted weapon may not always be available. The most telling part is that none of this has been announced. There's no official statement, no dramatic shift in messaging. Everything is happening quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. But that's how transitions happen in elite teams. They don't wait for the fall. They prepare for it before it arrives. At a certain level of success, a player's career stops being defined only by what happens on the field. It expands, it evolves. And for Travis Kelce, that expansion is already well underway.
If you compare his 2025 season compared to 2024, he had more yards after the catch on 21 less receptions. He forced 9 missed tackles in 25 compared to only 3 missed tackles forced in 2024. He's moving around better, looks better, is still a safety valve for Patrick Mahomes. He did tie for first in drops with 7, but he was 11th in drop percentage with an 8.4%. And that's worth noting because he did have his second highest drop percentage, and that was actually his highest since 2017. So is he aging a little bit? Can you see it? Yes, but is he still performing at a very high level when the average age of a tight end right now is 26 years old? He's 36. I would say he's still that guy and is definitely far from washed. Even when he turns 37 in October, he's going to be running laps around a lot of these guys.
Kelce is no longer just an NFL player. He's a public figure operating in multiple worlds at once. Media appearances, business ventures, endorsements, and a rapidly growing presence outside football have all become part of his identity. The game is still central, but it's no longer the only thing. That shift changes everything, because when opportunities outside the sport start to match or even exceed what the sport offers, priorities begin to adjust. The physical toll of football becomes harder to justify, the risks feel heavier, the sacrifices feel less necessary. And then there's the cultural spotlight. Kelce's visibility has reached a level where he exists beyond the typical NFL audience. His association with Taylor Swift has amplified that exposure globally, pulling him into conversations that have nothing to do with football. Whether people focus on it or not, that kind of attention reshapes a career. It opens doors that most athletes never even see. It creates a path where stepping away from the game doesn't feel like an ending, it feels like a transition into something equally significant, if not bigger. And that's a powerful position to be in, especially late in a career. What makes this moment unique is that Kelce doesn't need to chase what comes next. It's already waiting for him. The infrastructure of his post-NFL life is already built, already active, already growing. So, when you look at this contract, it doesn't just reflect football decisions, it reflects life decisions. Because for the first time, staying in the NFL might not be the most compelling option anymore. When you connect everything, the truth becomes hard to ignore. This contract isn't built for the future, it's built for one last run, one final season of Travis Kelce with Patrick Mahomes before the transition begins. The Chiefs have already prepared for life after him. The structure allows an easy exit, the offense is evolving, and Kelce himself is closer to the end than the beginning. So this isn't about how long he stays, it's about whether 2026 is the last time we see this connection at its peak, before it's gone for good.